Now, that's often experienced as a midlife crisis, anything that will shake us up and call us to go back to ground zero and reassess our life. It's not a bad thing, it's a beautiful thing. Because unlike the acorn and the oak tree, we actually have the capacity to try to withhold the flowering of our soul. But yet if you're here today, I don't think you want to do that. I think you're saying, let me water my soul. I want to yield all that I have. So remember when I told you that I was with my nephew and he's telling me about I'm going to fish from an airplane. Now I went to a reference that all of you have. You might not know it, but all of you have one of these books. It's called My Book of Limitations. Had this thing a long time. So I can remember when somebody said, Darlene, let's go dancing. I went, In 3rd grade, I tried to dance and they told me I looked like a goose. I'm not dancing. I got that one marked. No public dancing. You want to sing? Some of you would say, I tried singing before. Let me show you. There it is. Somebody told, I've got it on several occasions. People told me to be quiet. You can't sing. It's in my book of limitations. And we fight over these things, don't we? It's like, no, I can't do that. Well, the soul is saying, give me that book. You've got lots of material to work with. The soul is always saying, this is grist for the millstone. This is what you need for the alchemist fire of your soul. And yet we know this thing. We will reference this thing. Whatever comes up, oh, you want me to do something I've never done before? Let me just show you the many times I tried doing that before. That was a disaster. Nope, I'd rather stay in familiar territory. Thank you very much. You know the book. We've all got our own copy. The Book of Limitations. We'll put that down here. So how do we make peace with this dance, this tension? Our ego wants us to be happy and safe and protected, and that's where this Book of Limitations comes from. Our soul wants us to be free and awake and alive and uninhibited and ready to unleash more and more potential every single day. Well, the bridge between the two, believe it or not, is compassion. Now, more broadly, I would say that it's love, because God is love. And yet love is such a huge state of being and word and experience to try to comprehend that a doorway that allows us to do this is the doorway of compassion. Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, live with compassion, work with compassion, die with compassion, meditate with compassion, enjoy with compassion. When problems come, experience them with compassion. Compassion is a uniquely human quality. It's the very essence of a soulful, spirit-led life. I read a lot of definitions on compassion, and then I took bits and pieces from all of them and put them together and made my own, and this is my definition of compassion. Compassion is a state of being and a way of living that is motivated by cherishing other life expressions and desiring to alleviate all unproductive suffering. Is any pain or suffering productive? Absolutely yes. If you put your finger on a hot stove, it's painful. Is that productive? Yes, it's there to save your life. Pain is there to save your life. Suffering is there to tell you to tend to your pain. They're healthy, normal parts. They're telling us something is at risk, something is out of balance, something needs attention. And so we don't fear pain or suffering. We use them, just like we use everything in that book, as a passageway to connect with whatever we may be seeking in the moment. We are all free will agents, and our thoughts, our actions, our attitude, everything we do is either healing or hurting. Compassion is that component that as we learn to cultivate compassion, it opens the doorway for us to experience ourselves in our physical aspect and our soul aspect. And I'll give you some examples. Dr. Rachel Raymond, she's the author, she's a medical doctor and also the author of Kitchen Table Wisdom, a fabulous book if any of you have read that book. She tells a story about when she was 3 or 4 years old, for her mother's birthday, her father bought a table that was called a puzzle table. And she was fascinated with this little table, and her father gave her mother this puzzle table and then dumped this giant box of puzzle pieces. And it was there so that anybody that came in could sit down and different people would try to put the puzzle together. Well, Rachel, as a little child at 3 or 4 years old, nobody explained to her what this was. And one day when she was in the living room alone, she climbed up in the chair and looked at all those little pieces and started turning some over. And some were pretty, some were connected together. But she noticed a few of them that were shaped really strange and they were dark. And so to her, they looked like bugs. So she picked out some that looked like bugs and went and hid them under the sofa cushion. And every time she was in the living room by herself, she was mesmerized with this puzzle. She'd climb up in a chair and she'd find some pieces that she thought were scary bugs, and she went and hid them in the kitchen. Well, as you, where did the kitchen come from? She hid them under the sofa cushion. Well, you can imagine they didn't make a lot of progress with that puzzle. And she said her mother one day got very frustrated and finally stopped and counted all the pieces and said, "There's almost 100 pieces to this puzzle missing. Where are they?" Now, the other thing her father would do is he would never show the picture on the box. He never wanted them to know what it was going to look like. That was part of the mystery, was to put together these giant 500-600 pieces. So her mother went to her and said, "Rachel, have you seen any of these little things?" And she said, "Yeah, the scary bugs." And she said, "They're not scary bugs, honey. Where are they?" And she went and showed her, and they were stuffed all in the sofa. So her mother retrieved them and actually took Rachel in her lap and began to show her how to put it together. Now, Dr. Rachel said throughout her life, she remembered that, and remembered that quite often in our life, there's things that show up in the picture of our life that look like scary bugs, or things that we don't think they belong here, and so we try to hide them under the cushion of our heart or somewhere else. But yet the picture of our life can never come together until all the pieces, the good, bad, the ugly, the pieces we like and don't like, the pieces we understand and don't understand, and even though we can't see the picture, we know that they're all working together for good. She likened that to compassion. That her mother was like that spirit of compassion who picked her up and said, "Honey, don't be afraid of these little pieces. Look what can happen." Compassion is that aspect of us that allows us to open up to the greater dimension of all that we are. So how does that look in everyday life? I want to give you 3 examples, knowing that this will activate some opportunities for you. First, when I was the minister for Unity Church in Lawrence, Kansas, I'd only been there maybe 9 months or so. And we had, the church sign was at ground level, a big sign, which was a heart shape made up of 2 hands. Some people loved this church sign and some people hated it. Hello, that's church. We all have opinions. Well, one day someone crashed into the sign accidentally. I don't think it was a member. Happened one night. Someone crashed into the sign. So the board of directors and I needed to make a decision. Here, our sign is all busted up. What are we going to do about it? We found out it was covered. The insurance company would replace it. But here we sat in our board meeting, and we had 8 board members. 4 of them hated the logo and said, "Thank God, this is the time, let's get rid of that thing and get a new one." The other 4 really liked it and said, "Why would we ever want to get rid of it? It's just the perfect representation of our church." And they went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and then they looked at me and said, "You're the minister, just tell us what to do and we'll do it." And I said, "Thank you, but here's what we're going to do. As a board, we're going to practice our spiritual principles. We're going to discern what is in the highest, best interest of this church and make this decision together." So I led them in a prayer exercise where I said, just let go. We did some breathing and we all cleared the slate of our mind and let go of everything. And then I said, now I want you to really move into the spirit of compassion. And each person spent a few minutes and just opened their heart and really moved into that, whatever would move you in a spirit of compassion.